Hi everyone and welcome to our WorkLINC resource for navigating the interview process. My name is Laura Gannon and I'm the Education and Training Officer with LINC, and I'm joined by Ellie McIlroy, LINC's Community Liaison Officer. We're going to do a Q&A to cover some of the basic things you should know about preparing for and navigating an interview process. We hope you find this helpful, and you can find further WorkLINC resources on www.linc.ie.
So Laura, before the interview, what are some basic practical things to remember that people might not think of in favour of researching the role or company?
So punctuality is key. In today's working world, interviews can be in person or held online via video call. If you're attending an interview in person, thinking 5 steps ahead is crucial. For in-person interviews, aim to arrive at least 5 to 10 minutes before your scheduled interview time. If you're driving, use Google Maps to time your route at the time you are travelling for the interview to get an idea of traffic patterns and delays for that specific time of day to give you the most accurate information regarding how long you'll need to allow. If you're using public transport, don't look at the schedule to get you there exactly on time. Allow for traffic, delays, etc., and give yourself a cushion for that. Aside from the importance of being on time, if you're running late and tight for time, that will certainly have an effect on your stress levels and impact your mental state walking into the interview, and not in a good way. If for any reason you realise you'll be late for the interview, it's really important to contact the company and let them know in advance. Showing some consideration and explaining why you'll be late is far better than not and arriving late without explanation. You've probably already started off on the wrong foot at that point and are playing from 3 steps behind from the start. Also, don't leave it until the day of the interview to get your clothes ready. Aim to have that done the day before so that your mind isn't distracted on the day and you have a clear, focused run at your interview.
What would you say are the main areas to research ahead of an interview?
So make sure to read up on the company, its values and ethos, and have a good review of the job spec prior to the first screening call or first interview so that you have a solid understanding of the role responsibilities. Even if it's just an initial screening interview, it's really important to know the basics.
So what is the difference between screening calls, first round interview, second round interview, or final round interviews?
So employers might use screening interviews as an initial step to determine whether a candidate is suitable for the role and the company. Sometimes this is done due to high volume of applications or because of time restraints by the hiring manager. It's important, though, not to underestimate this step and how crucial it can be in moving forward as a candidate. These interviews can take place over the phone, online, or face-to-face. A screening call often includes a brief discussion about your qualification, attitudes, and experience, the opportunity to ask questions about the company or the position, a brief company description and the information on what to expect in the role, questions to identify whether a candidate meets the basic role requirements, a closing statement on whether you're still interested in pursuing the role. First round interviews will be focused on discussing your previous roles in more detail. There will also likely be a focus on competency-based questions, problem solving, and some critical thinking. Preparing 2 to 3 strong examples will cover a multitude of possible questions that could arise that will translate examples of your capabilities in different areas.
What would you say is the best way to prepare for some of these kinds of questions?
So using the STAR method for competency-based questions is the best way to prepare and help you create a structure for your answers and stay focused and on track, especially when you have to give longer, more detailed answers. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So when you're preparing an example, the approach you're taking is, what was the situation? What was your task or role within that situation? What action did you take? And therefore, what was the result or impact on the business or organisation? Behavioural questions help the employer get an idea of who you are. Some general behavioural questions include, what's an accomplishment you're proud of and why? Tell me about a time you failed. Have you ever had a disagreement with a co-worker in the workplace? And how did you make it work? How do you handle confrontation? Do you work better independently or collaboratively and why? What kind of manager have you worked best with? Tell me about a time you've had to go above and beyond to achieve a goal. Tell me about a challenge you faced and how you've worked through it. Or describe a time when you took initiative. It's important to remember every company has a different interview structure and there is no one-size-fits-all template, which can make preparing quite hard. It's okay to ask when the interview is being scheduled what kind of format the interview will be. who will be conducting it, so you can prepare accordingly. Nobody is trying to catch anyone out, so more often than not, you'll be given some idea of what to expect. If not, don't be afraid to ask the person scheduling your interview for a brief overview of the interview style or the main areas that the conversation will be covering so that you can prepare as best you can.
So what should you expect from second round interviews?
This interview could focus more on soft skills and whether you're fit for the company and team. It will also lean a bit more into your goals and your vision for your working life. It may also lean a bit more into technical competencies if that's the field you're in. For example, if you're interviewing for a role in accounting, they may show you a set of mock accounts and ask you to find errors. Or if you're in the tech field, they might want to see your coding skills with an example. Again, throughout every stage of the interview process, I would advise asking the person scheduling the interviews for an overview of what the next round will involve, just so you can prepare accordingly. They obviously won't give you a list of questions, but they should be able to provide some sort of outline of what to expect so that you can get yourself on the right page with preparation.
Can you give us any pointers on the dreaded strengths and weaknesses question?
This question comes up a lot, and it's one that people can really struggle with. First of all, this question isn't asked to see what your faults are. It's asked to gauge how self-aware you are and what initiative you're able to take when it comes to improving yourself. First of all, never try to disguise a strength as a weakness. For example, I'm too much of a perfectionist. Identify something authentic that you may have struggled with, but finish with the steps you have or are taking to improve on it. Ensure the answer is not something imperative to your potential role. So an example would be, I would consider myself someone who isn't overly confident when speaking to a large group of people in meetings. This was something that had previously stunted my ability to progress, so in my last role, I spoke to my manager about it and she agreed to work with me on this and allowed me to present to smaller groups initially and provide me with some feedback after each one to see where I was doing well and where I needed to improve. This helped my confidence grow over time, and now I feel I'm much more equipped when speaking to large groups, even though it is out of my comfort zone and not something I have a natural confidence for.
Can you talk us through practical or trial interviews?
So some jobs will request or require a practical trial element to the interview process. This could include work in hospitality, retail, hairdressing, or anything where the work is physically skilled. You are legally required to be paid for any trial or practical interviews, and we do have some more information about this on our frequently asked questions resource on www.linc.ie.
What are some good questions to ask at the end of an interview?
Some people view the opportunity at the end of an interview to ask questions as a formality or something they have to do. Actually, it's a fantastic opportunity to see if this is the right fit for you. And interviews are a two-way street to ask some questions that might shine a light on what things would look like if you got the job. Some good examples of questions to ask are, what would my first month or 3 months in the role look like? Or what's the most important thing I should accomplish in the first 90 days? What are the advancement opportunities for me long-term with this organisation? What do you personally like about your role in this company? What's the performance review process like here, and how often would I be formally reviewed? Can you tell me about the team I would be working with? Or how has the company changed over the last few years?
Would you advise any follow-up after the interview?
Yes, absolutely. It can never hurt to send a quick email thanking people for their time and maybe emphasising how interested you are in working with the company. It's a nice touch and sometimes can be the 1% between two candidates if it's a tight race. Mainly though, it's a good way to represent yourself and leave the interview regardless of the outcome with a positive impression.
Is there anything else you think is important to know before we wrap up?
So some advice that I'd usually give in interview preparation sessions is very simple but very important. Remembering to breathe, even if you have to practice slow breathing beforehand, is so important. If you blank on a question or panic, just buy yourself a little bit more time by asking the interviewer to repeat the question. That should buy you a few more seconds to gather your thoughts and center yourself. If you're unsure what the interviewer is asking you, ask them to clarify by saying, okay, can I just check that you were asking me X, Y, or Z, as I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly and give it the information you're looking for. It's 100% better than guessing if you understand what they're asking and risk going down a completely wrong path with the answer. Take your time and consider what you're being asked, and don't be afraid of silence for a few seconds. Think about what that tells the interviewer about you and how you respond to pressure. I am sure they would always prefer a candidate who takes a moment, thinks and responds correctly than someone who responds quicker and more reactively, just for the sake of speaking quickly. And finally, remember, it's just a conversation. They have seen your CV and feel you could be the right fit for this on paper. Your job is just to be consistent, honest, and most importantly, yourself. If the role is right for you and you are right for the role, it'll work out as it's meant to.
Well, that's it from us. Just a reminder, further resources that can assist you with your education, employment and training journey can be found on our website www.linc.ie. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Ellie.